Welcome everyone for February 2026, and happy to have all of you here. We have a lot of interesting updates to share with you today. So today we'll cover the latest regulatory updates regarding medical devices and IVD in 8 countries: in India, in Uzbekistan, Cuba, Mexico, USA, Ukraine, Thailand, and finally Vietnam. So let's start with India, where we will review an update related to risk classification list of medical devices. So we'll present 4 official risk classification notices that were issued by the CDSCO under the Medical Devices Rule 2017. So these notices classify medical devices and oncology devices. Together, they provide regulatory clarity regarding risk class allocation under Indian medical device regulation. So let's start with the first one. The Class A notice, dated 31st of October 2025, identifies low-risk medical devices that are non-sterile and non-measuring. So these devices are exempt from licensing requirement under a specific chapter of the medical devices rules, but they still must be registered with CDSCO. So the list includes products such as reusable surgical instruments, adhesive strips, support belt, and other basic healthcare items. So the regulatory burden here is proportionate to the minimal level or minimal risk of these devices. For the interventional radiology notice issued on the 26th of November of last year, it covers diagnostic and image-guided systems such as angiographic system, CT contrast injector, MRI equipment, ultrasound system, and optical coherence tomography systems. So most devices in this category fall under Class B or Class C, depending on the complexity and the patient interaction. However, the invasive intravascular component, particularly those introduced into the vascular system, may be classified as Class D in this case due to their high risk for the patient. The third one, radiotherapy notice, also dated from on the 26th of November of last year, focuses on devices involved in therapeutic radiation delivery. So this includes accelerated system, brachytherapy applicator for multiple anatomical states, and radiation control components. So because these devices directly deliver ionized radiation for cancer treatment, most are classified as Class C or Class D, reflecting their higher risk profile and therapeutic impact. So the oncology notice issued on the 2nd of January of this year, of 2026, classifies advanced cancer diagnostic and treatment technology. This includes alternating electric file system, cryoablation system, electroporation therapy system, embolization particle, brachytherapy system, and even machine learning-based cancer detection software. So many of these devices are categorized as Class D or Class D because they are invasive, implantable, or directly therapeutic. So when we analyze all these 4 notices together, let's see what is the, we have a clear classification pattern that appear. Low risk, non-invasive products remain in Class A, of course. Diagnostic imaging system typically fall under Class B or C. Radiation-based and therapeutic devices are generally Class C or D. Implantable and intravascular devices tend to be classified as Class D due to their higher clinical impact. So overall, the classification reflects proportional risk assessment based on invasiveness, duration of contact, and therapeutic function. So our second country today is Uzbekistan. Here we review updates related to resolution number 738 for medical devices registration. Now we have this resolution on the 24th of November of 2025. The Cabinet of Ministers of Uzbekistan adopted this resolution approving updated procedure for the registration of both medicinal products and medical devices. In this case, we will focus on the updates related to medical devices. So this regulation will enter in force in 2 days, and it's on the 26th of February of this year. So for medical devices specifically, as I said before, the regulation clarified documentation requirement, review procedure, and decision-making criteria. It also reinforces life cycle oversight, including structured management of post-registration changes and compliance monitoring. Now, manufacturer must submit a technical dossier demonstrating compliance with applicable standard. This includes device specification, testing results, and supporting documentation. All the details are listed in the resolution. So the authority may conduct, this is something that I wanted to highlight. They may conduct or request laboratory and technical testing to verify conformity. Testing ensures that devices meet safety and performance standards before approval, so they may require that. Not always, but it depends on their decision. So manufacturer must demonstrate appropriate production quality system. While this is not identical to pharmaceutical GMP, but manufacturer compliance is mandatory before certification is granted. Just highlight this comparison. Once approved, the registration certificate is valid for 5 years. Renewal procedure must be completed before expiration to maintain market access and not get a cancellation. Since we have a lot of updates today, we are moving a little bit fast, so we can have time to have a look at all of them. Here in Cuba, we will review an updated list of standards for compliance with essential principles. So on the 22nd of December of 2025, the assessment or the regulatory authority in Cuba approved regulation DN 10225 through resolution number 111-2025. This resolution or this regulation establishes the 20th edition of the list of regulatory laws, or how they call it, Lista Regulatoria de Normas. It entered into force upon publication in the official regulatory bulletin. The regulation updates the list of standards recognized by assessment. This is very important to demonstrate compliance with essential principle of safety and performance for medical devices and IVD. So the 2025 edition aligns with international regulatory references, including GHTF, and IMDRF document, as well as WHO recommendation. It incorporates the framework of essential principle of safety and performance, so in order to strengthen international with international harmonization. So a major structure modification in this edition is the reorganization of standards according to GMDN categories. This aligns the Cuban regulatory framework with the WHO recommendation on global medical device nomenclature system. This edition includes significant revision. 13 new standards were added, 27 were removed, and 35 were updated. These changes ensure like a regulatory framework, as we say that reflect current international technical development. So new device category were introduced in line with GMD and classification logic. This category group standards by device function, anatomical specialty, frequency of use, invasiveness, and sterilization attributes, also, and as well as sterilization attributes. So this improve the clarity. Now, starting with these additions, SysMed will publish only the changes introduced each year. The full consolidated list of recognized centers will be published every 5 years. So the full list will be published every 5 years, and every year there will be only the modifications. Okay. Now here in Mexico, we have 3 big updates. We will go through them in detail. The first one is regarding the interpretation of Norm 2541 SSA1 of 2025 regarding GMP. The second one is the reform of the General Law of Health, or Ley General de Salud, reliance and IVD. Okay, so let's review the first updates in Mexico. On November of last year, the COFEBRIS, of the Health Authority, published the interpretation criteria for this norm in the official gazette of the Federation. So this document clarified the application of the GMP for medical devices in Mexico and aligned GMP recognition mechanism with international regulatory reliance principles. For manufacturer, this means GMP compliance remain mandatory, but ISO 13485 certification and MDSAP audit report may now serve as recognized evidence of compliance. So this facilitates abbreviated pathway and reduces the regulatory burden for company already audited under internationally recognized system. Now, this norm establishes minimum GMP requirements covering the full life cycle of medical devices, from design and development through manufacturing, storage, and distribution. And the objective is to ensure consistent quality, safety, efficacy, and performance. Now, that was an important update. They already published this norm, but this is second document of the interpretation would help to clarify and understand more the points in detail. Now let's move to the second update in Mexico. So in January, 15th of January last month of this year, Mexico publishes a decree reforming several provisions of the Ley General de Salud, or General Law of Health. This reform introduces relevant updates specifically affecting medical devices and IVD. These changes focuses on registration validity, post-market surveillance, and inspection mechanism. So it confirms that the initial validity of a medical device registration remained, the initial one, the new one, remained 5 years. This applies to both medical device and IVD. There is no modification to the original approval term granted upon registration. So it's 5 years, still be 5 years. But where is the difference now is that the extension of renewal validity upon request and subject to compliance with regulatory requirements, of course. Registration now will be renewed for 10 years. So the first registration validity is 5 years, and second, and the renewal is 10 years. This represents a significant extension compared to prior renewal cycles and provide greater long-term of this of compliant manufacturer, of course. So it introduces Article 262 bis, formally incorporating technovigilance into the general health law. Once a device registration is granted, technovigilance activity must be conducted now. This includes surveillance of device safety, identification of incident, evaluation of adverse event, and monitoring of associated risk factor. This elevates post-market surveillance to an explicit statutory obligation in Mexico. So this reform strengthens COFEBRIS verification powers by allowing inspection and sanitary control action to be carried out through physical, documentary, or electronic means. This provides a clear legal basis for remote or hybrid inspection, which may impact manufacturer, importer, and authorized representative. So, finally, here we have the third update in Mexico. So before we start, it is important to clarify something. Talk about this is not new. Like Mexico has accepted foreign regulatory approval from since 2010 for FDA and Health Canada, and since 2012 for Japan. The 2025 document do not create equivalency from zero, as I said. Instead, they modernize it, expand it, and reorganize the administrative structure. So today, I will explain exactly what changes and what did not change. Now, for the first document, the DOF of 11 June, I already presented that, I think, in July of last year. But in order to understand the second document, the third document, and have an overview of everything, see what has changes in the August DOF in comparison with the first one, I prefer to represent again this data, and we will see all this in the whole image. So before 2025, if your device was approved by the FDA, Health Canada, or Japan, you could already apply in Mexico through an abbreviated pathway. Okay. However, each country had a separate administrative route. Each has different homoclave, or homoclave is like a code or process, different checklists, and sometimes different documentation format. It worked, but it was very fragmented. Now, the June 11, 2025 DOF, the one that we already analyzed on last July, is mainly a consolidation and expansion reform. It formally incorporates the concept of reliance under a broader legal framework. It officially commits COFEBRIS to a 30 business day resolution timeline. It also expands recognition beyond FDA, Canada, and Japan. So this was an expansion and a modernization, not a brand new system. So the most important changes in that expansion was that before 2024, European CE certificates were not clearly recognized under a formal equivalency agreement. Now, since June of 2025, they are recognized. Also, regulators that are members of IMDRF, such as Australia, Brazil, Singapore, UK, etc., are now formally recognized. So this significantly broadened reliance option. This was the first document. Now, as we said, also the 30 days of timeline were officially introduced. However, in practice, timeline may still extend, but this is the theoretical timeline. So also the product must be identical, of course, to the foreign approved version. Emergency authorization or conditional approval cannot be used by this route. Now, the second document that the July document is procedure, but very important. It explains exactly how COFEBRIS evaluates an application submitted under reliance. It confirms that the registration granted under equivalency has the same legal validity as a normal registration. It also clarifies that COFEBRIS will only verify identity and completeness. It also makes clear that if a discrepancy are found, for example, different manufacturing set or product specification, the abbreviated pathway can be denied and the application may move to full review. This increase, to increase more clarity, more legal clarity. So before July, reliance worked, but interpretation could vary. After July, the expectations are clearer. The regulator defined more precisely what must match between the foreign approved product and the Mexican submission. This somehow, of course, it's reduced the ambiguity. In August, reform is this reform is administrative restructuring. It removed all the FDA-specific, Canada-specific, and Japan-specific submission codes or homoclave. Instead of multiple country-based routes, there is now a unified registration equivalency route or procedure. So previously, applicant had to select a specific country-based submission code. Now the process is consolidated. The applicant submits under the general medical device registration structure and declare that the application qualifies under the equivalency framework. So the regulatory concepts stay the same. The administrative structure becomes simpler. So the system is now more harmonized and structured, and companies have more flexibility because more foreign approval are recognized. They have clearer documentation expectation. They operate under a simpler administrative system, not so many codes, the homoclave or whatever they were called. The equivalency routes now was not eliminated or changed, but it is modernized and straightforward. That was an important update in Mexico today. Let's move to the other country, USA, where we will review updates regarding Quality Management System Regulation, QMSR. Now here, but the applicability is now. So on February 2nd of 2024, the US or the FDA published a final rule amending 21 CFR Part 820. So although published in 2024, the regulation becomes effective on the 2nd of February of the 2026. This reform does not create completely new system. Instead, it updates and modernizes the existing quality system regulation by aligning it with ISO 13485 of 2016. The name is also changed from QSR to QMSR. The major change is structure, not conceptual. Previously, FDA had its own standalone quality system regulation. Now it directly incorporates ISO 13485 2016 Let's see how. So this is very important. Although FDA incorporates ISO 13485, compliance with ISO certification alone does not automatically mean compliance with the FDA QMSR. FDA added certain requirements to align with the US law. So from a practical perspective, manufacturers must reorganize their quality system according to ISO 13485 structure. They must also conduct a gap analysis to ensure that their previous QSR-based documents comply with QMSR. An FDA inspector may review all the records created before 2026. So this is a major practical impact. Under the previous QSR, certain internal documents were excluded from FDA inspection. Under the QMSR, those documents may now be reviewed. This significantly, this was introduced to have more transparency. So even if a manufacturer holds ISO, as I said, 13485, FDA will still conduct inspection. ISO certification does not exempt a company from FDA oversight, of course. And finally, the MDSAP is a voluntary third-party audit program accepted by several regulators, including FDA. However, it does not eliminate FDA authority. It may reduce inspection frequency, but FDA remains the final authority. Now, moving to Ukraine. In Ukraine, we'll review an update related to health technology assessment, or HTA for medical devices. So on November of last year, the Ministry of Health of Ukraine approved order number 1771, which introduces for the first time a dedicated methodological framework for health technology assessment, or HTA, specifically for medical devices. So this is an important milestone. Until now, HTA in Ukraine was primarily focused on pharmaceutical. Medical devices were mentioned in legislation, but there was no clear methodology explaining how they should be assessed. This new guideline fills the gap and creates a structured evaluation system for higher risk devices and IVD. But what is health technology assessment? It is a structured evidence-based process used by government to determine whether a medical technology should be publicly funded. So it evaluates whether a device is clinically effective, safe, economically justified, and sustainable for health budget. So it does not determine if a device can be legally marketed or not. That is handled by technical regulation for the registration. This HTA determines whether the government will pay for it or include it in a national healthcare program. This is very important distinction. Now, this guideline focuses on medium, high, and high-risk technology. Class 2B, Class 3 devices typically include implantable devices, complex surgical system, cardiovascular technology, and advanced therapeutical devices. Class D IVD are the highest risk diagnosis tests, such as those used for blood safety or critical infectious disease. Active implantable devices include pacemaker and similar life-supporting technology, etc. So this means a reform. This means the reform target technology with high clinical and financial impact. Now, since we have several manufacturers in the audience, I think that was important to highlight. Before this reform, Ukraine did not have a dedicated HTA methodology, HTA methodology for medical devices. Now the framework aligns with European and international best practices. it draws from UNET HTA, which is the European Network for Health Technology Assessment, as well as from national models like NICE in the United Kingdom, and ICAR in the USA. So this alignment reflects Ukraine's broader policy direction toward harmonization with the European Union and USA. So the HTA dossier must demonstrate that the device works better and at least as effectively as current alternatives. Manufacturer must provide clinical evidence comparing the device to the standards of care. In addition, they must include economic modeling showing whether the device provides value for money. A budget impact analysis must also be included, estimating how adoption will affect national healthcare spending. So this introduces like a significant new evidence burden for high-risk devices. So unlike pharmaceutical, medical devices often evolve quickly. Their performance may depend on surgeons, expertise, or hospital infrastructure. Randomized controlled trial may be limited, specifically for surgical technology. This guideline acknowledges this and allows flexibility in evidence tips, including real-world data and registry. So this is important because device evidence generation is fundamentally different from drug development. So for IVD, the evaluation goes beyond the analytical performance. The assessment may show how the diagnostic test improves patient outcome. For example, does early detection reduce hospitalization costs? Does improved accuracy prevent unnecessary treatment? The system evaluates the entire testing pathway and its impact to the health decision. The State Expert Center under the Ministry of Health will conduct the assessment. They will issue a draft conclusion, allow the applicant to respond or to clarify issue, and then publish a final non-confidential version. This, and formally, HTA is voluntary, but practically, as I said, if a company wants reimbursement or public procurement, HTA become necessary. Therefore, for company targeting the public healthcare system, HTA should be considered as a mandatory strategic step. That's the importance of this procedure. Hope this help some of you from the audience, manufacturer can be interested in that. So in Thailand, we review and update related to medical device labeling and IFU regulation. Thailand Ministry of Public Health issued a new notification in December 2025, updating the rules for medical device labeling and an IFU. This new regulation replaces 2020 notification and become legally effective on June 20, will become effective on June 2026, specifically on of June. The objective is modernization. It simplifies certain label requirements, harmonizes IFU obligation between devices tip, formally allows electronic IFU, and shorten timeline from completing import labeling correction. However, it does not radically change the system. It just refine and restructure it. We'll see how. So compared to the 2020 regulation, the 2025 notification introduced, as we said, several refinements. The number of mandatory labels element was reduced from 12 to 9, but this does not mean information disappeared. Some elements were shifted from the IFU instead of being shifted to the IFU instead of being removed. The regulation now harmonizes IFU requirements for home use and professional use devices, which previously had different structure. Software as medical device are now clearly categorized with defined labeling rules. The grace period for correct and incomplete import labeling was reduced from 180 to 120 days, and electronic IFU are now formally permitted and regulated. A lot of reform. So, one important improvement is structure. The regulation now formally divides devices into 4 product categories. This eliminates ambiguity seen under the previous framework. Each category has defined labeling and IFU expectation, which improve predictability for manufacturer managing mixed portfolio. This is specifically relevant for companies dealing with both hardware and software products. So language obligation remain user-based. Devices and intended for general public use must have labeling and IFU in Thai. Devices intended exclusively for healthcare profession may use Thai or English. This apply consistently across physical devices, software, reusable instrument, and accessory. So this principle did not change, but it is now more clearly structured. The final rule remain formally confirmed that IFU may be provided electronically. This includes QR codes, website link, and digital media. However, accessibility must be ensured. The IFU must remain traceable to the specific device version. This is particularly relevant for software and higher risk devices where updates are relatively frequent. So software devices are now explicitly regulated. For non-physical devices, labeling may exist entirely in electronic format. Instead of batch or serial number, a version number may be used. UDI or apply conditioning to class 2 to 4 were required. This clarified regulatory expectation for digital health company. And reusable surgical and dental instruments remain relatively unchanged. Core identification information remain mandatory. No new UDI obligation were introduced specifically for this category. This remains maintain a kind of stability for manufacturing in this sector. And the regulation clarify how accessories should be treated. If an accessory is registered separately, it must have its own label and IFU. If it is registered and packed together with the main device, and a combined label may be used. This clarification resolves inconsistency that previously created compliance confusion in Thailand. At customs checkpoint, only minimum information is required initially. However, incomplete labeling must be corrected before sale and no later than 220 days after release. This was before, as we said, 180. And from a practical perspective, company must review their product portfolio and confirm correct categorization. So labels and IFU content must be redistributed correctly between physical labels and documentation. Electronic IFU system must ensure accessibility and traceability. Import timeline must consider the shortened 120 correction window. A gap analysis before June 2026 is strongly recommended to avoid disruption. Now, we updates from Vietnam, so we're gonna go fast on that, but clear. So we'll review 2 updates. The delegation of medical device authority to IMDA. This is very short. As it is announced in the title, basically, delegation of medical device from the health authority to I is a new one. And the second one, internal and electronic procedure for medical devices. So let's review the first update in Vietnam. As we said, it was published on November. And Ministry of Health of Vietnam officially delegated several regulatory responsibility for medical devices to IMDA, or Infrastructure and Medical Device Administration. Most important structural change is the transfer of operational authority for all this. So previously, certain procedures were handled directly under the Ministry of Health. Now it will be handled under the IMDA. Basically, licensing, inspection, enforcement, import control, free sale certificates. For Class C and D medical devices, which are medium and high risk, they will be issued circulation number by the IMDA. In addition, the authority will handle the post-marketing inspection after approval. So all the authority to suspend, cancel anything, or revoke circulation number, all things that are part of the post-market surveillance. This new authority has explicit authority over batch level control. This means if a specific lot of devices, like I said, if it is not compliant, can suspend the circulation. They also have authority to lift suspension once issue is resolved. So everything related to the recall, batch control. It issue also import licenses and certification of free sales. This reform also extends to organizations that conduct testing and calibration of medical device, issue, renew, and supplement registration certificates for this organization. So for manufacturers, future application communication will go directly to IMDA, post-market surveillance also, import licensing. So finally, here we are with the second and last update in our last country today. So here we are analyzing decision number 3830, issued by the Health Authority in December of last year. This decision does not introduce new classification rule or new technical requirements for medical devices. Instead, it standardizes how administrative procedures are handled internally and electronically by the ministry. It focuses mainly on Class C and D medical devices, which are medium, high, and high-risk devices. So let's go quickly on this, so we can have at least 2 questions or 1 question. This decision so formalizes 10 procedures under the authority of the Ministry of Health. The most important procedure for manufacturer are those related to new circulation numbers for Class C and D. In Vietnam, circulation number is the official authorization allowing the device to be marketed. So the decision also includes procedure for fast-track approval, emergency approval, or for epidemic control, disaster response, and special cases where a product may continue circulation even if the manufacturer ceases the operation. Additionally, it regulates the issuance of free sale certificates, import licenses, and the registration of medical device inspection organization. So this means the entire administrative life cycle of high-risk devices are now structured under standardized internal workflow. One of the most important updates introduced by the decision is the formalization of review timeline. So for fast-track application, the review period is 10 working days. For standard application, the review period is 45 working days. And it is very important to understand that this timeline only starts once the dossier is complete and the applicable fee have been paid. So if it is not paid or complete, the clock will not start. From a practical perspective, this provides better planning capability for manufacturer, and it also improves accountability. All procedure under this decision are processed electronically through the official online portal. Once submitted, the system automatically assigns the dossier to reviewer within the Infrastructure and Medical Device Administration, and the workflow is clearly structured: reception, fee confirmation, technical review, internal evaluation, advisory consult review when required, and final approval or request for implementation. This is like more structured. If people had experiences with Vietnam, that was especially complex, and now they try to simplify all this process. So the dossier requirements are aligned with Vietnam existing decree. It includes all these elements. You can review all this list. And clearly describe the internal review step, as we said previously. Total official framework from 30 to 45. Another important update is the introduction of standardized administrative forms. For example, if the authority needs additional document, it must issue a formal request for supplementation form. If the review is delayed, an official apology and revised delivery notice must be issued. The circulation certificate format is also standardized. This improves predictability and reduces informal communication. Manufacturer will receive structured and documented responses at each stage. Thank you. Thank you for extended 2 minutes more. We have a question at least. If there is any question, I can receive one question or two.
Hi, Iman. How are you?
Hello. Good, thank you.
Yeah. Okay, thank you for the presentation. I have a question about Vietnam. What about Class A and B devices? Are they also transfers to IMDA?
No. Class C and D. For now, the Class A and B still with the old authority.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, man.
You're welcome. So yes, if we don't have any other question, I would like to thank you so much for your attendance and hope to see you again in our next RegTalk for March 2026 with more news, more updates in same or different country. We'll see what is the scope. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Iman. Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, Iman. Bye, everyone.
Thank you. Just want to stop the recording. It is not. Yeah.